Hey Life Science, hope you're doing well. When you watch this video, we're going to be covering seed plants in the video today, and I'll be asking you a few questions I want you to reply either in an email or on LMS with the answers to. But let's go ahead and get started. So seed plants, when you think of a plant, you probably think about seeds, or a plant that makes seeds and flowers. And so in the Bible, there's a parable of the sower, and it is found in all three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so when the Bible repeats something, it's like exclamation point, like emphasizing something that's very important in our lives. And so it's found in Matthew 13. In the parable, Jesus is telling them the sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Others fell in the rocky places where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up because they had no depth of soil. When the sun had risen, they were scorched because they had no root, they withered away. Others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. And others fell in the good soil and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. That's from Matthew 13. And so basically the question is, what kind of soil is your heart? There's four different soils here. And the one who does not understand the word, the evil one comes and snatches the word away, Jesus says. The one whom it is sown in rocky places, this is the person who immediately receives it with joy, Jesus says. So like, oh, this is great news. This is amazing. But when persecution arises or affliction, because living the Christian life is hard and you will endure tribulation and trials, they fall away. They're like, oh, it's not worth it. So did they have real faith is the question. The one whom it was sown among thorns, man who hears the word, but here's the deal. Worry and deceitfulness of wealth, Jesus says, choke the word and it becomes unfruitful. And then finally, the last one is a good heart, Jesus says, one who understands it, and this person bears fruit. This person is living the life. So what kind of soul is your heart? So I would check that parable out. It's really cool. But anyway, seeds are really cool because I have this phrase that I picked up from a study a while ago. But basically, a seed is a baby in a suitcase carrying its lunch. How is that? Is that the baby is the embryo, it's baby plant. The suitcase is a seed coat or a protective covering, and the lunch is like the nutritious source of food for the germinating, which means growing and sprouting seedling. So a baby in a suitcase carrying its lunch. There's different types of seeds. There's monocots and dicots. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about those later. But you can see kind of corn and beans. You eat seeds all the time for food sources. So there's two different types of seed plants: gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms have comb-bearing plants. Remember, they mean naked seeds. And angiosperms mean flowering plants. So again, when you think of a plant that flowers, that is, an angiosperm. So one of my greatest top, easily top 3 to top 5 bucket list items is going to see the Great Redwoods, Sequoia National Forest. So how does water travel against gravity in a redwood? So this is question 1, okay? I want you to research that. But seriously, these trees are, hundreds of feet tall, some of them. How in the world does water travel up a redwood? There's no pumps. There's no muscles. Tree doesn't have muscles or anything. But how does water reach those leaves at the very, very top? And so I want you to research that. I'm going to skip over some of the answers here because I would discuss it in class if we were talking about it. But here's an example. Tallest tree on earth. It's taller than the Statue of Liberty. I've never been to New York, but it's taller than the Statue of Liberty. How does water travel up that far? So you'll find that that's an interesting answer. So plants contain a network of conduits or tissues. And so you can see here that we also have, tubes in our body. So plants have xylem and phloem. This is water and nutrient transport. We transport blood, hormones, nutrients, waste in our body as well. So plants, this is vascular tissue. So vascular tissue is an advantage for plants to have. They can grow taller, they can transport nutrients and water. They have an advantage compared to non-vascular plants. And so there's 3 types of vascular tissue: xylem, which moves water; phloem, which moves food; and then the cambium, which produces new vascular tissue and grows between the xylem and phloem. So you need to be able to contrast those three types of tissues. So let's briefly kind of talk a little bit more about them. Xylem can contain a couple different elements. First off, they can contain tracheids. So these are found in all types of vascular plants. They're single cells with tapering ends, okay? These, again, moving water. Vessel elements are found in angiosperms only, but angiosperms, this is an advantage because a vessel are much longer and they're the main component for water conduction. So it is an advantage for angiosperms. So here's a picture kind of showing you the differences. Sorry, it's a little blurry. Tracheid and vessel element, you can see the differences there. Phloem moves food. And this is similar to, you can see these sieve tube elements and companion cells, which basically are the energy and the living cell of the sieve tubes, and then parenchyma cells are the outside covering. And so here's another picture here. Sieve tube elements are long, thin cells stacked end to end. Companion cells help control the functions of the sieve tube element. So the sieve tube doesn't have a nucleus or anything like that, so it needs some help. And so here's just a summary kind of a picture here. Sieve tube element is the conducting element. That's where the food is moving into, nutritious food, sugars and stuff. Companion cells are life support. The fibers are structural support, and the parenchyma is packing material between other types of cells. So one of my favorite verses, before we move into like anatomy of plants, one of my favorite verses in the entire Bible is this one. Blessed is the man, the person who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. He is like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream and does not fear when heat comes, for its leaves remain green, and is not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit. This is a beautiful picture of what it means to be in Christ. The world's going to throw a lot of problems our way: heat, drought, COVID-19, health issues, maybe financial issues. But the person who trusts in the Lord, they're always going to be bearing fruit. Why is that? Because they're right near the water. They're right near the living water, Jesus Christ. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful verse. Question number 2, though, as we move into the anatomy of plants, how would you, let's say you're a city, not worker, but maybe on a city council or a city worker or someone who kind of helps decide how to fix problems like these. How would you solve a problem like this? So you don't want to tear up the trees. Some students in the past have been like, let's just rip up the tree. No, let's try to save the tree. It's beautiful. So you want to save the tree, but you also don't want Granny Smith to trip over it with her walker, and that would be bad. So how would you fix a problem like that? But of course, these problems are dealt because of roots. Roots are very complex, of course, but the root system of a plant provides the stems and leaves with water and dissolved minerals. In order to accomplish this, the roots must grow into new regions of the soil. So roots grow. The growth and metabolism of the plant root system is supported by a process of photosynthesis. So it's all working together. But roots have to get those minerals and water from the soil to be able for the plant to grow. So you can see here, radishes and carrots, beets, all examples of food sources that develop in the root system of a plant. So I want you to name, questions part 3, I want you to name 5 foods that we eat that are actually the root of a plant, not including the ones I just told you. Going up into the Smoky Mountains is amazing, but this tree is the maple tree. I actually believe I have a few in my neighborhood. People, I don't know how they got here, maybe people planted them or some stuff, but yeah, there's one that sheds its leaves like a couple doors down from me, and it's like leaves everywhere. And when it gets a little cooler in Florida, it doesn't change color though, because it doesn't get as cold and it doesn't have that much sugar that causes the leaves to change color. But this is the maple tree, and you can kind of see the geographic range right here. But why do I show you a picture of a maple tree? Because maple trees produce the glorious maple syrup. I don't know if you've ever had breakfast with someone and they put so much maple syrup that their pancakes were swimming in it. Maybe you're that person. But here's a question I want to ask you, part 4, okay? How many gallons of sap does it take to make 1 gallon of delicious, wonderful, glorious maple syrup? Just 1 gallon of maple syrup. How many gallons of sap does it take? So what they do, you can see pictures of this or videos of this online. They drill into the trunk of a tree or the modified stem of a tree, and they get this watery sap out, but there's sugar in there that eventually can boil down to maple syrup. So how many gallons of sap does it take? So stems connect roots to leaves. Stems do a couple of functions for plants. For example, they support the branches and the leaves. They provide transport for water and minerals and food, and they produce new growth. How do plants get taller? Stems grow. So that's very important. Not a bad star right there. Not bad. Connects roots to leaves. So we're past when the leaves, leaves are coming back now. We're not in fall anymore, but you can see I love comics, as y'all know, but there's good old Snoopy doing a backflip into leaves. I don't know if you ever jumped into a pile of leaves, but leaves, raking them is not the funnest. Not that's not a word, but it's sometimes a problem. But why are leaves important? Well, hopefully y'all know by now. But photosynthesis is the main way a plant lives. Not the only, it has to get minerals and water from the soil, of course, but photosynthesis happens in a leaf. That's where it happens. And so without leaves, you cannot make those sugars that drive sugar and oxygen that drive cellular respiration in plant cells. And so, of course, it needs water from the root system. So it all works together, but leaves are the site of photosynthesis. So let's look a little deeper into leaf anatomy. So there's basically two layers, palisade parenchyma and spongy parenchyma. The cuticle is the outside layer, so the arrows are something that's important. Cuticle is that waxy outside layer that protects it. You can see here that there's guard cells and stoma. Stoma are basically openings on the underside of a leaf plant. And some plants have different modifications or adaptations that allow them to keep the stoma closed or open. But guard cells basically close and open the stoma. So here's the deal with this. Why am I having if there are no guard cells? Well, let me just tell you, this isn't a question. Let me just tell you. There's the vascular tissue right there, the xylem and the phloem. So what is happening here is that, and I think I might just move my video here. Let me see. Sorry, pause. Pause for 1 second. Yeah, I did. How do I move that back? Let me move it back. There we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, no, what's happening here is that the stoma is open. Why? Because we need carbon dioxide to come in to make sugars. CO2 is turned into C6H12O6 for our purposes. But when the stoma is open, we're also losing water vapor because water is exiting as vapor. And so if it's really hot and dry outside, plants will close their stoma, but if they're not able to, they'll lose too much water. And so some plants, especially plants that grow in hot, arid regions, they have adaptations that allow them to keep those stoma closed and to conserve water. So here's just another picture of a plant, palisade mesophyll, spongy mesophyll layer. So you can see that spongy is more spread out. There's all the cells there. These cells are tightly compact together. You can have gas exchange a lot more better in the spongy layer. Vascular tissue, here's the underside, the stoma, the opening, and the cuticle, which is the waxy covering. Gymnosperms versus angiosperms. So both of these produce seeds. One's naked seeds, the gymnosperms, and one produces flower, the angiosperm. So gymnosperms literally mean naked seed. They're more advanced than ferns. They do not have spores, they have seeds. So seeds is an advantage, of course, protection from the outside environment. Seeds can travel, last a long time. They're an advantage. So here's some examples of gymnosperms. You can see here conifers, like pine trees, cycads, seen them in Florida. There's one native to Florida. Ginkgos, which are very rare, and old trees, and then netophytes, which are also very rare to see. Finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is angiosperms. This right here, this isn't me. Quick glance, people are like, "Yeah, that's you," and I'm like, "No, it's not me." But this is the largest flower on the planet. Rafflesia arnoldi, and I'm not sure if I said that right. I think I did, but it literally is the largest bloom. It can grow 3 feet across and weigh up to 15 pounds, but it's pretty interesting. It's actually a parasitic plant. It has no visible leaves, roots, or stems. It attaches itself to a host plant to obtain water and nutrients. It's a parasite. But not only that, it's so big. If you were near this plant, you would hold your breath because literally it smells like rotting flesh. And why is that? Because it's trying to attract flies and insects to it. And so literally that is, you can look it up, pretty interesting stuff. And so there's more than 260,000 species of flowering plants. That number's probably changed, it's probably higher now. Almost all the food eaten by humans comes from angiosperms or from animals that eat angiosperms. So you can see that they've dominated the scene. They dominate the scene. Angiosperms produce seeds that are part of a fruit. Fruit grows from parts of a flower. So flowers are not only beautiful, they serve a purpose. They are how plants reproduce. And so question part 4 is, I want you to answer this question for me. How are angiosperms and gymnosperms alike, and how are they different? Okay. Final thing that I want to talk to you about briefly is growing cycles and monocots versus dicots. Okay. So if you ever like bought plants, I don't believe in, I just don't have money to buy like plants that die every year. Like I have, when I plant plants in my yard, which there's not many, I want to make sure they come back every year. And so plants that grow, flower, and produce in one growing season, so those are called annuals. So it completes its life cycle within 1 year and then dies. And I'm like, nope, I'm not dealing with that. Some people like it; they're beautiful, of course, but I'm like, no, I need perennials. See, biennials complete the life cycle in 2. So during the first year, the plant grows, roots, stems, and leaves. Second year, produces new stems and leaves and flowers and seeds, and then they die. I'm like, no, that's still not. I don't. Nope, nope. So I need perennial. Perennials come back every year. They move. They can grow for more than 2 growing seasons. So flowering plants are organized in either 2 groups, monocots or dicots. And so this is the differences here between a monocot and a dicot. A monocot, the floral parts are in 3s or multiples of 3. So you can go outside and look at your flowers and see what kind you have. They have long tapering blades with parallel venation or veins. The vascular bundles are scattered and they contain 1 cotyledon. You don't have to know about the cotyledons. Dicots and life signs. Dicots, floral parts are in 4s or 5s or multiples of 4s or 5s. They have broad to narrow leaves with netted veins, and the vascular bundles are arranged in a circle. So here is question part 5. Last question for today. What adaptations of flowering plants enable them to survive in diverse environments? Again, angiosperms are found all over the planet in various, ecosystems. What adaptations enable them to survive in these diverse environments? So we probably have one more video, but this, again, I'm just trying to help you prepare for 9th grade biology, where you will learn about plants. And so I wanted to briefly introduce you to plants on an introductory level. I hope this video was helpful, guys. I hope to see you soon. Hope your family's doing well. God bless.